Hello and good evening to all the greeters. Welcome back after a few months of a big break between the sessions. I know that we ended last time with your first course with the first lesson, but today we're going to be continuing that lesson, continuing that series of formation sessions that we have for you. And this is going to be for all the greeters, for all the new greeters, and also and it also goes on to extend to everyone else who is interested in becoming a greeter, especially during these times that we need volunteers to keep the parish going. So particularly the role of greeters has changed since the last time that we were opened. The last time the greeters primarily not only welcome people and say good morning or good evening, but they handed out the worship aids, they handed out the bulletins, greeters passed around the baskets for the collection. So many of those aspects of the greeter ministry has been diminished, and in its place, it's temperature checks, checking people in, spritzing after mass, etc., etc., etc. But just because we have changed the ministry of greeters doesn't mean that we will stay like this forever. And so hopefully one day we will go back to passing out worship aids, passing out the bulletins, passing around the basket for the collection. But for now, let us all think back to before COVID, even after COVID. What did it mean to be a greeter? Or in today's world, reopening the parishes, what does it mean being a greeter? What does it mean welcoming the person who comes in through that door? You have a clipboard with a registration sheet on it. If one day we reach maximum capacity, or if on the list we have 200 people signed up, a person who comes to walk in, they did not register, comes to see our church, comes to participate in mass with us, comes in through that door. Remember, you're supposed to be greeting, you're supposed to be welcoming. What do you do in that situation? What happens in that particular time that you know that you are the face of the church? You should be welcoming, you should be happy, you should be showing the person go into the church. This is where we sit down, this is our beautiful church, this is a copy of our bulletin, this is a copy of our worship aid. But now you have a choice. You check their temperatures, they're over 100 degrees. You probably have to let them cool down during the warm weather in order before you recheck their temperatures and let them cool down. But what if their temperature does not go down? Do you have to ultimately make the decision to ask the person to leave? You may say to yourself, well, that's not welcoming. That's not who we are. Or that's not what our church is. We don't turn away people. We can make the argument that says, well, Jesus cured the sick. Jesus administered to the sick. Jesus administered to the wounded. But at the same time, we have to start to think about what is at risk in our communities, especially during this time. What is at risk? What is important? The safety of our parishioners, your safety, your own safety. Because again, since you are the face of the church, you are basically on the front lines. You are greeting the people. You are standing in front of the people face to face, and so you have a great risk to be exposed to the situation right now, which is the virus, the coronavirus. How can you still be welcoming at the same time? If you have to turn a person away because of their temperature, or because they're not wearing a mask, they won't be compliant, or because we reach maximum capacity in the church and we can no longer admit any more people, how can you still be welcoming? And that is going to be the reflection for today. So if you have your Bibles handy, let us open up to Matthew the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 to 37, and verse 40. Now, the context of this reading is that Christ will judge all according to those who cared for the hungry, the thirsty, and welcomed the stranger, etc., etc. But there's one particular verse that I want you all to focus on, and this is welcoming the stranger. Now, you can read the entire citation, the biblical citation on your own, but I want you to focus on this particular verse, which is verse 35. And the entire verse is actually, "For I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, and a stranger and you welcomed me." So like I said, like I was mentioning earlier today, the reasons why we send people home when they come into the church may be because they don't have a mask, they're not registered, or we reach maximum capacity, or it's because of a failure to follow the guidelines. Now, I remember a few Sundays back, there was a couple who failed to follow the guidelines, which is to wear a mask completely over the nose, and we had to ask them to leave. Now, were we welcoming? Were we not welcoming? That is the million-dollar question. And what does it mean to make others feel welcome? What does it mean to know the risks, but at the same time be very welcome? During this time, the role of greeter has become very difficult because of that situation that you may be placed in. Thankfully, we haven't had a situation where we had to turn people away at the door. But what if that day comes tomorrow or this coming weekend? How should it be done? How can we still be welcoming, but at the same time try to have the person understand the risk that they are putting themselves and us in? So an example could be, if a person did not register for Mass, you may direct them to our website, where they can ultimately choose what time they want to come to Mass. If they want to come in during the weekday, on a Saturday Mass or on a Sunday Mass, and they could register there. You can give them a copy of the bulletin to take home. That is a way that you can still be welcoming, but ask the person to leave. You know, you're offering them our times of Mass, our website for them to go and sign up for Mass, instead of just saying, no, you cannot come because we've reached 200 people. No, you cannot stay because you did not register. I need you to leave because you're not wearing a mask. Well, if it, you have to kindly be very gentle with people. Even though the risks and the dangers that they are putting themselves and us in, we still have to have that welcoming aspect. Knowing the risks, keeping in mind the risks, and being welcoming at the same time. So if a person comes in without a mask, offer them a mask. There is a basket in the entrance. We constantly refill with masks that a person can take. Sir, ma'am, here's a mask for you to wear because you have to be wearing a mask at all times when you're inside. Or if they request for gloves, there is the gloves are for the Eucharistic ministers and for the spritzers specifically. So you greeters are able to access the gloves. But if a person requests gloves, give them a pair. The reason why I don't put the gloves out there is because they fly by like this, and people will just take them, endlessly. And so, but if the person requests gloves, you offer them gloves. You direct them to the seat. Remember to sit down in the green ribbons and not in the red. But if they're not compliant, what would you do in that place? Maybe the person would offend you. Maybe that will cause you to get a little bit angry. But we have to remember to always keep calm. We have to always remember to be Christ-like. So as a greeter, we say, good evening, welcome to St. Elizabeth Seton. Let me take your temperature. They're not wearing a mask. Here's where you can grab a mask because it's a requirement for you to come in with a mask. If they're coming in with their masks to the bottom, please ask them to lift them up and make sure that they cover their nose. Um, if they're just here for the bulletin, gladly give them a copy of the bulletin. Make sure that they sanitize their hands before coming in, and if everything keeps coming very, very well fluently, uh, like if you were in a restaurant or or in a hospitality sort of environment where you're serving the person, then you would still be in a situation and in a position where you are welcoming, where you are a greeter that's being welcoming. A bad greeter who is not usually welcoming is that person who really does not come in direct with the human person that's coming in front of you. So for example, if they're not wearing a mask, you're like, oh, you need to leave because you're not wearing a mask, or wear a mask. You should know you should be wearing a mask, or just saying, oh, just you remember to only sit in the green because or else we're gonna kick you out, or using very harsh words against the person is you tend to be not very good. And so that is where the aspect of the welcoming greeter gets lost. One thing I do have to tell everybody is that all of the greeters are doing a fantastic job. I'm very thankful for you. You have been doing a very fantastic job taking the temperatures, etc. Seeing the need of the parish, because to be honest with you, without the greeters, we wouldn't have opened the parish. Or without greeters, we cannot keep the parish opened, because there are a lot of parishes in the archdiocese that couldn't open early because of volunteers, the lack of volunteers. There's no greeters to welcome people at the door to take the temperatures. The priests cannot do everything by themselves. And that's why they need the assistance of greeters or volunteers to help out with that. And so for that, I thank all of the greeters who have volunteered to do all of that. If one day, or if in the previous days I wasn't there or I didn't see that you weren't welcoming with your words, don't worry about it. Sometimes we have very bad days. We don't know what's been going on in your personal life, or maybe you've just had a bad day, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or don't feel like if you turn people away, you're not being a welcoming person. Don't feel like that. Don't feel anything negative. Sometimes in our lives, when we take in negativity, sometimes we can use that negativity and turn it into something positive. But when we constantly think about this very negatively, that tends to be sort of a problem, because you're not an unwelcoming person. You all are welcoming people. Again, the way that you welcomed me when I began a year ago, it's unbelievable. It's very amazing how you have that charisma of being a greeter, that charisma of interacting with the people, that charisma of being a human person. So whatever you're doing, whatever you need to do, whatever the risks are as being a greeter, don't feel that you're not being welcoming. But in the end, if the person leaves happy, or if the person leaves unsatisfied, or if the person leaves angry and throws a lot of very bad words at you, saying, oh, you are all unwelcoming people, oh, all of you are not Christian, all of you are not this, well then don't worry, because you can only do as much as you want to do. You cannot be a magician or a wizard that you can satisfy everybody's needs. No, you can only do so much, but it's up to the person who comes in through those doors to use their own judgment, to use their own maturity, to use their own brain, so to say, to respond the same way to you, or respond very harshly to you, which you don't deserve at all. And so that is our reflection for today. It was more of a reflection than a lesson, because I know that the ministry of greeter has changed for over the past few months. But there's no need for me to correct anyone, or on on how to do their ministry, because you're all doing a fantastic job. You are all very well trained, very well, very good greeters, very good ministers. And so for that, I congratulate and I thank each and every single one of you. Now, for the last session, which I believe it will be in 2 to 3 weeks, we will be talking about, this will be an actual lesson now. This will be the last session of the greeters. Will be, how does your ministry connect with the other ministries? Right now we talked about the person who comes in through the door. Now we're going to be talking about next time on the other ministries that are during the liturgy, during the mass itself, and what is your role for that? How does it all connect, so to say? How does it all connect? Your greeters with the Eucharistic ministers, with the lectors, with the altar servers, etc., with the sacristans too, etc., 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 etc. How does it all connect? So that's what we're going to be talking about next time. And remember, for a more reflection, or if you need the time to pray about it a little bit more, the biblical citation that we use today to reflect on or to talk about as a community, as a ministry, is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 through 46. So that's the entire context of the last the judgment of the nations, which is what the discourse is called. But the specific lines or citations that we talked about today is, again, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, but this time it's verses 34 through 37 and verse 40. Thank you very much, greeters. Again, if there's anybody who is willing to come back to do the ministry, please let me know. I will give you further instructions if you feel the need and that you are ready to come back to do the ministry. Please let me know. Otherwise, continue to stay safe at home. Continue to be with your family. Stay in contact with your family. God bless you all, and stay safe.